Well, good morning, everyone. Thanks for being here on a cold day. You're the brave ones, but you don't live in North Dakota or Michigan. That's a good thing, right?
Yeah.
You don't have to do any shoveling today. So this is a very famous passage we have from Jesus, but I thought I'd start off, instead of going straight to the Bible, which can be a little heavy on the front end of a sermon, but I might share with you some other things that are more common to us, and then we'll get back to the Bible. So, like many of you, I should start this way. Almost everyone I know goes through a time in their life when things are pretty bleak. And you're not at an easy point in your life. You could have lost something dear to you, or you're just going through something that's really hard. Something unpleasant. Something happened that you didn't want to happen. Even though it might be part of life, but still you didn't want that part of life to happen to you. So, it could be that you got unemployed, maybe unintentionally. You wanted your job, but they laid you off. Or, you see, that happened to me when I was a waiter. I was actually working as a waiter for a living. This was not my summer job. This is what I needed to pay the rent. And I was really quite a bad waiter. I'm always very sympathetic to servers and waiters now. I always tip 20% because I know their job is, from my point of view, is pretty hard. So I needed this job, but I'd made so many mistakes along the way. They had tried their best to teach me how to be a good waiter, and I just didn't have the knack for it, and it wasn't too good. So I said, it's time for you to move on to your next career. And so I did. But it was a kind of rough time. And then other hard times, like, of course, my parents have died, so I've lost my parents, and some of that took, one death took a long time from Alzheimer's, one took a short time because of cancer, and I didn't like either time. People always say, is it better for you to, for someone to die quickly or suddenly, or maybe you should have a lot of warning and time to prepare? I don't really like either one, thank you. Those are hard times. And of course, been divorced, lost marriage. Nobody likes that, no matter whose fault it is or how much fault there is to go around or whatever the reason is. Nobody planned to get divorced when they said, I do. So, having said that, when you're in those dark times, I've had lots of opportunity, and so have you, for people to give you advice on how to get through them. How do you survive them, and how do you make it through? Because you can feel like you can't get up in the morning, or can't get one foot in front of the other. So, people have told me lots of things. One was to exercise, because you burn off some stress, and you get out of your head for a little bit. If you can go get your cardiovascular going, it's okay. So I did some of that exercise stuff, and they say, well, eat something good. You don't feel like eating when you're in a bad time. Mostly you lose a lot of weight, and you lose your appetite. So they say, well, keep eating. So I tried to do balanced meals and all that, which I'm not very good at. I don't think bacon is a balanced meal. For some people it is. And they said, well, go try to be around people as much as you can, even though you really don't want to be around people. But if you get to be around some friends, it's better than being alone wherever you are. I have done the alone thing. I can tell you, if you're in a bad situation, there's no place more alone than being in a bar by yourself. Woo! Don't go there. You can be in a crowded bar, and you're still by yourself. That's even worse. Anyway, I won't go into that story much farther. But I can tell you that's not a good idea. They said, well, go be with some people, find your friends, call them up. So, here's the other thing people said. This is what I wanted to focus on in terms of our gospel reading. It said, even though you're in a bad situation, try to find an opportunity to go help another person who's also in a bad situation. In essence, even though you don't have much to give, try to give something of yourself away. Give yourself away to somebody else who's in a tough situation. There'll be some empathy for that other person because you know what they're going through is pretty hard and you're going through something hard too. But try to find a way to give yourself to someone else in service or in friendship or in some way you can help them, support them. Because when you give yourself away, like Jesus says in this gospel passage, when you give yourself away and spend yourself, you actually get life back. Which is kind of a crazy paradox. You think if you don't have anything to give, or you don't feel like it, or if you want to go with the whole self-protection thing and you want to go with, I need to take care of myself and do what's good for me. Sometimes when you push it too far and you don't give something away, you actually begin to lose some life. So people lots of times have been correct when they told me, give something away, then you'll find that you feel better. We could go into that story a little longer, I suppose, but one time when I was in Houston, I was not in a great situation. I decided to go help out at one of the big food pantries, kind of like what we have here at church, but it was a very large operation. So all they did was bag groceries in the back room and give them to people when they came out. Just like you all do here, nothing fancy about it. But when I meet the people who come to the window and say, do you have some soap? Do you have a toothbrush? Do you have some meat? Do you have any canned vegetables? And I say, I think we do, as a matter of fact. You go back, get the stuff, bring it out. And at the end of the day, ironically, I feel better, even though I helped somebody else. So I wanted to share that as one example of what Jesus might mean when he says, if you try to hold on and keep yourself isolated or alone, and you take care of yourself, and you don't give yourself away, open yourself up and let life flow out, then life cannot flow back in. So consider that as a possibility for the meaning of the phrase. If you want to save your life, well, give it away or lose it, and you'll end up finding life again, your true life, a deeper life. To bring us up in another context, I have seen people in pretty happy marriages, and at that level, when you're talking about just two people, sometimes the best thing you can do in the relationship is, if you try to give yourself to the other person and do something that they like, that maybe you don't like, and you say, well, I'm going to sacrifice my time, energy, or I'm going to do this thing that's not my favorite thing for them. That kind of a sacrifice, gosh, it means a lot to them. And when you give yourself away, somehow it comes back to you. I mean, obviously, they will like you a little more. Maybe they'll do something for you now. But they don't have to. Somehow, when you love or give yourself away, it actually feeds your life. And of course, in a marriage, when things are going pretty well, and of course, by experience, I can tell you they don't always, but when it's going well, there's like this funny reciprocity where you can't give enough away because the other person is giving so much to you, and then you get fed and you want to give more to them, and it's this little motor, this little engine keeps going. So I want to help, and then you help them, and then they want to help you, and it kind of goes back and forth. So ironically, when you end up giving yourself away and doing something maybe you don't really love, but you do it for the other person, sometimes the life comes back to you. So I know it works when you're depressed. I know it works pretty good in a marriage situation. I think it works in lots of ways. I do know that the happiest people I know, in general, are those who have found some way to share themselves with others. There are lots of examples here at church. There's some happy people in church, and they have found ways to give themselves away in all kinds of settings. I know it from the church world. Is she here today? Where's Hyacinth? I hope she went home. Well, good. She won't hear this. You won't know anybody more than Hyacinth Bridges who likes to give herself away and serve other people. And she's really quite miserable when she's not. So, I know she does everything in the planet, I think. I think she does Altar Guild. I know she does all the food we do here. I know she's done world mission stuff where she did medical mission work for some other folks. And she's on diocesan. She went to council with us 2 days ago to work on the council delegate situation. She's a counter of money, which is always helpful. She can always take a little off the top, makes you very happy. And she served on the vestry 100 times. Every time they need to pick a weed out of the garden, Hyacinth wants to pick the weed first. The funny thing is, you think that she would lose herself because she gives herself away, but in a funny way, she kind of gets her life from giving away. Isn't that funny? Jesus says this in lots of other ways too. He says it here really point blank in this setting. If you want to save your life, you're going to lose it. But if you give yourself away, you're going to find it. And the other ways he mentions, I'll just throw them out there so you know I didn't make it up. He says, if you give finances or resources or something you own away, he says, it will come back to you. If you give it away, it will come back to you he says, like you're getting a full container of grain, he says, pressed down, shaken together, it's going to be poured into your lap. If you give something away, it comes back to you again. Very odd. And then he says, if you want to be the greatest person, the greatest disciple, well, become the least and become a servant of everyone. And then your leadership will come back to you. Very strange words he said. If you want to be the greatest, become the least. If you want to have, give. If you want to save your life, lose it. So, I know it works in marriage. I know it works when you're depressed. I know it works for people like Hyacinth. It seems like the principle Jesus is teaching could be really true, even though intuitively it sounds wrong. Think of other things, though. You know what the best businesses are? The ones that are the most successful are the ones that go out of their way to the nth degree to serve people, serve their customers. They get the most loyal customers in the whole world. So ironically, if you want to have a great business, become the greatest servant and try to give yourself away. They don't have them around here, but I'll always, when I can, I grew up in the Northwest for a little bit, and there's a store there called Nordstrom's department store. You can go into Nordstrom's 10 years after you've bought your shirt and give it back to them. I said, after 10 years, I've decided I don't like it. And they'll say, thank you very much. Would you like to have cash, or can I give you a store credit? It's crazy. I'll always shop at Nordstrom's if I could, because they want to give themselves away. And now I want to give myself back to them. So maybe it works in business too. I want to end with this one practical side note, a little application. And that is this. Not everyone can work or have their vocation or their job be in a service-oriented situation where you're serving other people all the time. Sometimes you just work in a factory making widgets. It's like, well, this is not serving humanity. I'm not really doing this for anybody else. I'm just making widgets for my factory. So, if you could frame what we do in the light of giving yourself away or being of service to others in some way, perhaps with your co-workers that you work with. How can I help John over here who's making widgets with me? How can I make his life better? How can I pour myself out for him? Well, then, going to work is a way of giving yourself away, even though you're not doing something directly of service. So, there are lots of things that I can think of where gosh, your job and what you do for a living, you say, well, what good is this? This is just a regular job. I sit in my cubicle, or I make burgers and fries, or I push paper around, and this is nothing to do with like service, or how am I giving myself away? Well, you might be able to orient that and say, well, you know, this is when I come to work here, I'm going to do everything I can to make my fellow employees have a good day. I'm going to be a blessing to them. I choose to be a blessing to them. So no matter what you're doing for the actual job, you could give yourself away to the people around you. Become a blessing to those around you, and the blessings might come back to you. Give, and it will be given to you. If you want to be the greatest, learn how to be the least. If you want to save your life, well, lose it and spend it, and then it'll come back to you. I've heard this last image a million times, by the way. I'll share it with you. It's slightly tacky, but I remembered it, so it can't be too bad. I'll do this just briefly. You know the Jordan River flows into, has a whole tributary system. It ends up in the Dead Sea. There's no outlet, right? All the water goes there and stays there. And the image, of course, is this. If life comes into you and you have your life, but you don't give it away, you become like the Dead Sea. Nothing lives there. Only when life comes in and then you share it back out. And now the water is good and clean and abundant. It doesn't stagnate. And there's life in those rivers. So when life comes into you, give it away, and life will come back to you from another source. That's the idea. So you all are disciples of Jesus. And he says, look, if you want to be my followers, take up your cross, follow me. I'm going to give my life away. If you learn the principle of, by following me, of giving your life away, you'll end up finding your life, and you'll save it. So here we go. Disciples of Jesus, let us give ourselves away, and you'll find your true life. I offer this to you in God's name. God the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.